Hello everyone, and in this video we're going to go through the basic sequence of assigning all of the IK and reverse footlock controls into our simple little rig. I know yesterday when we were going over this in class, we experienced a few bugs that was kind of getting in the way of our understanding of the sequence, and I really just kind of wanted to walk through this entire sequence for you real fast so that we have a good understanding of how all of this gets put together. Now, as a reminder, there are written instructions that follow this identical sequence over on Canvas. So please make sure you print those out, follow those identically, and then also use this video as a guide to help you put together the inverse leg controls for your leg, and then also the reverse footlock controls down here for your foot. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to look at my scene from the front, and I'm going to start off by creating some bones. Now, I'm going to add in a root bone and then a hip bone, because this is where you're going to begin for your green dude. Now, for the context of this assignment, we're just focusing on this one leg, but I think it's a good idea just to kind of see how all of this stuff is going to dovetail into a much more complex skeletal system. So there's the root down there. This is going to be the master control for both hips, and then we're going to branch to each individual leg. So here's upper leg left. There's the knee joint. Let's look at our scene from the side. Here's the ankle, the ball of the foot, and of course, the toe of the foot. Before I drop the tool, let's just do some positioning here. That works pretty great. Upper leg is going to be more in the center of the leg. The ankle is looking pretty good, but let's examine the location of these other two joints in perspective, and I just need to move them inside of my boot. Yep, there we go, looking pretty good. I can drop the tool, and now let's get to the business of binding all of this jazz into our geometry. Now, I'm just going to double click on this one leg, because I just want to bind these joints to the geometry. Now, when you do it on the green dude, it's going to be all of the joints, but for the context of this simple little illustration, I'm just going to bind the leg joints to the geometry. So I got the joint selected. I'm going to hold down the control key and grab the geometry, enter into setup mode, and we can find all of our binding controls in the deformer sub-tab, and there it is. Now for the context of this assignment, I'm going to use smooth distance because it's fast and it's cheap. Works pretty well. I get all of my weight maps visualized inside the viewport. Let me just turn those off. It's under the active meshes. I know that I've done my job. If I exit setup mode and simply just rotate my joints, I moved it on accident, but there's the rotation. Things are good. Now, I'm not going to go over the paint weights because you guys are masters at that already. I want to focus all of my energy on the creation of the inverse kinematics and, of course, the controls for the reverse footlock. Let's get into that. So this is where the instructions on Canvas begin. So all of the stuff that we just did, we covered last week, and all the stuff going forward is the new stuff that we covered in class yesterday. So let's enter into setup mode and start the process of getting this inverse kinematics. We start by selecting the upper leg left. You know what we forgot to do, and let's just do it real fast because this is a good practice to get into. Let's name all of our items. So this is our root. This next one, this is going to be the hips. Now this joint is going to control both hips. And now we start branching into individual legs. So this is upper leg left. Of course, this is going to be left underscore knee, left underscore ankle. This is the ball of the foot. And the last one is the toe of the foot. Naming your joints as you make them is a good practice. It keeps you on the same page. It makes it a whole lot easier to understand what it is that you're working with. So I grab upper leg left. Then I hold down the shift key and grab the ankle. And now we can start adding the inverse kinematics. So I'm over here in my toolbar, inverse kinematics, and we're going to assign the IK solver and then immediately add the goal to it. There it is. That's what it looks like. Life is good. Let's exit setup mode just for a second. Test to see if this whole thing is working, and haha, it's working the way we want. Let's re-enter setup mode and continue our work. All right, back to the item list just for 1 second, because we need to start naming some of this stuff. So let's name this guy, this IK. So this is going to be left leg, IK goal. There we go. All right. Now, before we go any further, we need to zero out the positions and the rotation channels for the IK goal. Because look at all the transform information that was been passed to it when we created and then positioned it inside of the scene. So we want to zero out both the position and the rotation. There we go. Life is good. Now we're on to the next step. Now the next step, we got to start creating all of the locators and all the control points for the footlock itself, for the reverse footlock. We're going to need 4 locators, okay? So how you do it is up to you. I'm just going to hit the create locator button 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Before we go any further, let's begin to name all of these locators so that we understand their role inside the larger context of our rigging system. So this first locator, this one is going to be, of course, left ankle. And I'm going to put control in here because these are control points. These are not joints. So this is left ball. This is going to be left toe control. And then lastly, this is going to be left heel control. Okay. Now that we've created the locators, we need to start placing them inside of the rig or at the locations where we want. Now, to make it easier for us and easier for the computer to ensure that the correct locator is going to the correct spot inside of our 3D scene, I'm going to deactivate the visibility of the ball, the toe, and the heel. That way, what I see and what I'm manipulating in my scene is absolutely the controller that I want to influence at the moment. Now, we're going to use these drop actions to very quickly move the locator from its default position at the origin to where we want. You can find your drop actions up here. And we're going to do match position. That way I can interactively drag and drop things inside of my scene and get them placed where I want. So I'm going to drag my ankle control onto my ankle joint. And there it goes. Okay, that's what I want. Let's go grab ball control. Same idea. We're going to use that drop action. So we're going to left click and drag it onto the ball joint. There it is. Here's the toe controller, as one might imagine. We're going to left click and drag it onto the toe joint down there at the top. And of course, heel is the last one, and there's one small addition to the heel sequence that we need to add. We're going to drag and drop it on top of the ball joint, but now we're going to translate it back. Now I'm using the item transform tool because I want the heel control to be right outside the heel itself for the geometry, because this is going to represent where the ankle is going to rotate back. All right, so that's pretty great. Okay. So now that we've moved all of these locators, the next thing that we want to do is that we want to start zeroing out their positions because we've moved them around. So I want all of these new locators to have their positions zeroed out. Okay. So with all of those locators zeroed out, we can start parenting them to each other. Now, again, I'm going to use the drop actions. So we're going to use parent in place right up here at the top. And we're going to start here at the ankle. So where the ankle gets parented to the ball control. The ball control gets parented to the ankle, or excuse me, the toe control. And then lastly, the toe control gets parented to the heel. Okay? If you look at the item list, this is what your hierarchy should look like. Heel, toe, ball, ankle. All right, rock and roll. That's looking pretty good. Now with all that stuff done, we can start applying some constraints. And we're going to begin with the ball control. So the first thing that we're going to select is that we're going to select the ball bone. So that guy right there, the ball joint. And then we're going to hold down the shift key and grab the ball control. Over here inside of our modifiers, or excuse me, our constraints section, we're going to add a position modifier, a position constraint. Okay, rock and roll, that one's done. Now the next thing that we need to do is that we need to select the ball joint. Okay, so once again, here's the ball joint. Then hold down shift and grab the toe locator. And we're going to do a directional constraint. This ensures that this toe locator is always pointing towards the ball joint. Saves us from getting any sort of shearing inside of it. Okay. Now, what we need to do here in order to continue our work, the next step, we got to parent our IK goal to the ankle locator. And you can use parent in place. That works just as fine. Or you can do it well over here inside the item list. Let's see. I like using the drop actions. There it goes. Awesome. Okay, so that's working out really well. I think this is going to work the way I want it to. Now, in order for us to ensure that we don't get any sort of odd rolling on the top of our foot, we're going to add in another locator. Now, this locator is going to serve as an up vector for the directional constraint between the ball joint and the toe locator. So let's just call this, rename this. This is going to be left foot up vector. There we go. And let's match position to the ball joint. There it is. Wonderful. And now I'm also going to translate this. Just move this up above the boot. Something like that. Okay. Now the next step is kind of tricky because we need to go in and we need to go find the directional constraint, okay, for the left ball. Now there's a couple ways we can do it. Remember, the directional constraint is on the joint itself, and I have the joint selected. And you can see over here in our item list, underneath the plus sign, the actual directional constraint. So we need to physically select the constraint, and then the next thing that we need to do is hold down the Shift key and grab the up vector. Now there's two ways of assigning the up, or two ways of assigning this locator as the up vector. You can find it over here in the Assign Up Vector section in your Constraints tab. That's probably the easiest place to do it, but you can also find it in the Directional Constraint Properties on the right. So let's just do Assign Up Vector. We get a nice little dotted line. That's a good visual confirmation that life is good. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to parent in place this thing, okay, the up vector to the toe control. So that one over there. Change my drop actions back to parent in place and drag it on top of control. There we go. Okay, so that's done. The reverse of foot lock is complete, but let's just test it real fast. We have one more thing that we got to do, and that's getting the knee to work. So let's just test it real fast. Nothing flies apart, which is a good indication that I've done my job, and life is good. I'm getting the deformation that I'm after. I can rotate that back, and life is good. Let's return to setup mode real fast and start getting the knee to work, because we want to have some control here for the knee. So what we need to do is that we need to add in a couple new locators, because I need to have one up here at the top that will serve as the parent for the directional constraint back down to the IK goal, and then I'm going to need an additional locator for the knee. Okay, so we can control the rotation of the knee and continue to pose our character the way we're after. So let's add in those locators. First one first. This is going to be the new. This is going to be the root leg left. Left locator, cool. And now we're going to match position to the hip bone. Okay. Drag that new locator on top of the hip bone. It goes right up there at the top. Life is good. And now we're going to zero out all of its position information. So it thinks that its current location is its home. Okay, rock and roll. That's pretty great. Now we're going to create another locator. This is going to be the locator that controls our knees. Let's give it a good. So this is left, knee, control, rock and roll. And like once again, we'll change our drop actions to match position. I want to left click and drag this on top of my knee, and oops, excuse me, I missed it. There we go. And like the foot up vector, I'm just going to place it out in front of the knee itself. Don't have to go too crazy. This would be a little too far. That's too far. That's too close. Somewhere right around here. That way we can really understand the role and the purpose of this locator inside the context of the rig. Okay. Okay, and like we did with the root leg left, we also need to zero out its position. Okay. All right, now we can start wiring in the function of these two new locators and continue to craft the final result. Let's do it real fast. We're going to start with this locator up here. Okay, so we're going to select root leg left. And then we're going to hold down the Shift key and grab the IK goal way down there at the bottom, okay? Way down there at the bottom. And now we're going to add a directional constraint between them. And you know you've done it right. When you see a little purple line that goes down in between them, that top locator changed a little bit, so this is starting to look pretty great. Okay, now, once again, we need to access the directional constraint that was just created. It's on the root leg left over in our hierarchy, and we need to physically have it selected. There it is. Ta-da! Okay. We're going to hold down the Shift key, grab our knee locator, and we're going to assign that locator as an up vector, and we get the little dotted line. Now, it's not going to work quite yet because we still need to do some parenting. If you look very carefully over at your hierarchy, root leg left isn't really a part of an existing hierarchy. So we need to insert this. Okay, we need to insert this entire structure into all of this jazz up in here. So upper leg left, okay? So we're going to parent, or we're going to insert root leg left, which is just a locator, and we need to insert it right underneath the hips in here, okay? Now, there's a couple of different ways that you could do this. You could just drag and drop it, okay, like this. You can grab that, parent, or just drag it on top of hips. It now becomes a child of hips, and then you can retarget this structure as a child of root leg left. That will work. That will work just fine. I'm going to hit undo a couple steps, okay? However, what I think I'm going to do is simply choose Insert. Insert in place, okay? That way, I can just drag and drop it on the hip joint itself. And it's going to do all the hard work for me. There it is. I like Insert in place. It's a good tool. Now, the final thing that we need to do here, once we've inserted root leg left control into our joint hierarchy, is that we, once again, need to zero out the knee. It should be, I always do a good double check, yep. And then we need to get the knee parented back onto the ankle control. So let's just do parent in place. I want to drag my knee locator onto the ankle control locator and insert it into the hierarchy. Okay, the proof's in the pudding. Let's see if it actually works. Let's exit setup mode. The mesh doesn't explode, so I have great confidence that it has, in fact, actually worked. If I grab my heel locator, which is really the driver of this entire setup, yeah, look at that. Pretty great. Now, the knee, this is the knee control way out here in the front. And this is what we benefit from by putting that up vectors, because now we can roll the leg left and right and start to pose our leg the way we want it to, okay? So that's how you go in and add the inverse kinematics for the leg and add the reverse footlock commands and all the associated up vectors to really get a good, strong rig for the bottom part of your mesh.